can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
I'm good, good. Yeah. How are
That's
you?
wonderful. Yeah, I'm very good. Yeah, the weather's very nice here and everything. How are things your way in Scotland?
The sun's actually shining today. I don't know if you can see beside me. If I'm a bit too washed out on this side, you can let me know. But yeah, I've got a window sort of just kind of to the side here.
Okay.
So it's quite even the curtains going across that are quite sort of thick, it still manages to it can still be quite bright coming through here. So yeah, I haven't really been outside much today yet, so I don't really know how warm it is or if it's cold and sunny, but certainly the temperatures have gone up a little bit in the last kind of week or so. So dare I say the threatening spring somewhere, but
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky here in Ohio so far, knock on wood. The temperatures have been pretty nice. So if we can just keep that trend going, it would be lovely until, spring actually officially arrives.
yeah, you're looking very festive there, I can see.
Thank you. I'm hoping this will bring spring on. So
No, it's nice that I'm often saying that darkness and winter is such a big part of Scotland, basically, in our culture, because I mean, I love the summers when we get maybe 2 hours of darkness. It's daylight for so long, but the flip side also happens in the winter. It'll get light about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then it's getting dark again by 3. But we don't really do winter very well. We do Christmas and all that, but when you go to Scandinavia and Germany and other countries, they've got lights up and not just Christmas lights. It goes on for months and months. So I've been saying that for a long time. We need to do winter better.
yeah.
It's maybe across the world, yeah. But
Oh,
so
so
listen, thank you for getting in touch. Thank you for asking me to do this. I'm honored.
no problem. Thank you so very much. I'm honored that you accepted. Thank you. So tell me about yourself. You seem to have quite a lot going on. You seem to be very diverse.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Yeah. All right, sorry, I just if you just bear with me, I'm just going to adjust my settings here. I've just realized when I use Zoom for teaching guitar, so I had to make sure that whenever I'm speaking or whenever I'm speaking, that it's recording if I need to record anything for my students. But that means that I've done that a couple of times, and then I've gone to show them the video later, and because the settings have been off, it hasn't actually recorded, or it's recorded them watching me, which is not great. So I've got something here, but
Oh, no problem.
do you know what? It doesn't matter. I'll just put it back on gallery. It's okay. That's fine. So yeah, where do I start? I suppose, I mean, fundamentally, I'm a musician. I mean, that's sort of what I've been playing the guitar since I was 5. I grew up in a very Glasgow household, very sort of Irish Catholic background. Every party, every sort of get together would inevitably end up in songs and as it passed around the room. So yeah, but then when I went to at school, I remember being, sort of getting up on stage and doing sort of performing as an actor when I was about 7 or 8 in the kind of first school show that I did. Might even have been earlier than that, but so that's been a big part of kind of both were running a big part of my life. And then when I went to university, I studied languages. My parents are language teachers, or were. So that has informed a lot of what I am and who I am and what I do. Because I grew up in a house where, although we were, growing up obviously in Glasgow in the UK, my mum had lived in Madrid in the early 60s for 2 years, and they lived together in France in the early 70s for a year. And then my uncle was married to an Italian, he was also a professional musician, and would sing in about whatever many languages he spoke. So it was very, you know, I grew up in this kind of house where, you know, people speaking different languages or coming from different places was completely normal. So, you know, that's all kind of gone into a melting pot. And when I studied languages myself at university, I then played in a band for 4 years in Spain, for, I don't know, almost about 6 or 7 years. And I lived in Spain for a year as well during that time. So, which has a big sort of effect on me. Spain is still like sort of my kind of second home. In fact, I say that, I mean, having said that, I've never actually been to Latin America yet. I have studied Latin America, so it's on the to-do list. So I'll possibly arrive in Mexico someday and think, oh, I like it even more here. But yeah, just the whole culture, the Latin culture, it's always something that's just sort of connected with me. So yeah, you know, and after the band played around Glasgow for about 4 or 5 years, and then we split up, artistic differences, or something like that. And then yeah, I found myself doing open mics and running sort of shows around Glasgow for 4 or 5 years. And then at the same time did my HND in acting, because I was sort of went into that for a while. But also there's a lot of stuff happened at home because my nephew was born, and my big sister unfortunately was diagnosed with cancer, and we lost her sort of a year and a half later.
Sorry.
So I kind of, you know, I'd kind of changed my focus on what I was doing. So there's been a lot, you know, and yeah, there's a lot there that, you know, and that I could go on forever. But I mean, fast forward to what, 2016, when my then other half and I had the opportunity to go and play and work in China for 7.5 months. Oh. And again, fast forward, and a few months later in a summer camp, I found myself sort of conducting about 120 Chinese 10-year-olds, never having had a conducting lesson in my life, but with a professional trained conductor sitting behind me, just, you know, sort of saying, oh yeah, you're doing fine, there you go. So yeah, that was a kind of a little bit of a eureka moment that wakened up the music in me again. It had been kind of put on a back burner. So then I went back to uni a couple of years later, did my master's in songwriting, and here I am, really. Sort of that's now the focus. I still do a bit of acting here or voice work, but, you know, writing and performing music is to be my focus. But obviously that certain little virus has kind of got in the way of that over the last couple of years. But yeah, at the same time, it's given me a chance to kind of consolidate a lot of what we did during my degree, and to kind of, sometimes when you work on things, when you're writing, especially when you're writing for a deadline like that, you just want it done. And music needs to kind of settle, I find. I suppose maybe that's the reason why for a lot of artists, it's a difficult second album thing, because the first album they've probably written for 15-20 years or whatever throughout their life, and it's settled, it's bedded in. So, and then the second album they've just written. I'm kind of the other way around in a weird kind of way, because the first album essentially is my master's project, that, you know, was very carefully written and put together, but it was put together very much with a very tight schedule. So since then, I've then had the chance to play music and play the things that I'm doing, and play those songs again and work with them, and just sort of get the feeling for them more, you know, especially the newer ones, and sort of feel, okay, is this how I want it to sound? Am I comfortable with this? As well as obviously writing more. So yeah, that's and the Spanish sort of influence is definitely coming in more and more, along with more of a kind of dance and kind of electro kind of influence. So somewhere between Glasgow and Ibiza probably is my style at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of how I got here, more or less.
Yeah, I noticed when I was going through your biography and everything, I saw Welcome to the Content of My Head, which is a very good. You've got a very good voice.
Thank you.
But yeah, I noticed the style. of the songs, you know, kind of alternated a little bit of rock, a little bit of alternative, everything kind of in there. It felt really good. So when you were putting that together, how soon did that come out? Was that 2019?
Well, that was my master's project, so it was
Okay.
November 2019 was
Okay.
when it went up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because I find myself now, like over the last few months, I'm now working with one of my best friends, a guy called Stephen Sheridan, who Stephen and I have written together for many, many years. And he has been my red pen for a long time. He's been the person that that, you know, would often, I was desperately trying to disagree with when he told me something was wrong, but then you'd listen and you think, nah, he's right, actually, that I don't need that third verse. So we're working on, you know, putting something together now, and actually, so he's now going to produce, which is something he's kind of been doing for a long time to me. So we're kind of making it official. But in the process of doing that, it's meant that we've then started to have more conversations about what style actually are we going to go in. I think because of the time scale of things for the uni project, I wasn't really able to have those conversations as much. And also because of just sort of personnel, getting hold of people, getting hold of studios, getting hold of, you know, when you've got a university studio that, you know, you've got another 25 students all want it, plus all the other undergrads, plus, you know, there's a lot going on. So, you know, it's just, you know, you do the best that you can in the time scale. But I'm now getting a chance to have a sort of conversation. So, you know, where I think that where listening to Welcome to the Contents of My Head, you're hearing really distinct different styles, and I don't think that will change. I think, you know, I still have those influences in different places, but I think what's going to happen with my work now and what we're going to produce, hopefully, fingers crossed, this year, is something that will marry all of that a lot more together. One of my biggest influences, I was just listening to Depeche Mode, but also one of our biggest influences I find for writing is Death Cab for Cutie, Seattle band, where they managed to sort of, they're a rock band, but it's that marriage of electro and dance, and you know, so I think there's going to be I think it'll be interesting because there's the new material that we're working on just now, but then, you know, I'll go back and look at some of the other stuff and see if there's anything we want to do with it or not. But just to kind of, yeah, to take those styles and kind of mold it into one where it's a little bit more like that kind of Death Cab kind of hybrid kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're very good at it, because I noticed, you know, even when you were switching styles and everything, it was just perfect the way that it came together.
Well, thank you. I can't take credit for all of that. A lot of this there's a good 3 or 4 of the songs were written, were co-writes with other people, and obviously in the studio it's very much a team effort with your engineer and everyone else that's around. But yeah, I guess you just kind of focus on what the song wants each time. And I think that, when I was talking to Stephen about this not so long ago, I think when you go into something like this, you maybe there was a time when I used to sort of get worried about, oh, what's my style? What's my, it has to look like, it has to sound like me. And I think now I'm more just focusing on, if I get the song right for what I want it to sound like, or we want it to sound like, then the style will out, you know. So as we focus through sort of, you know, Serenity and Contents and Signal of Life and all the tracks on there, it was just about what's good for this song and does it work, and then we trust that, you know, that sort of my voice and my playing and the guys that are with me and the guys that are working with me, that will give the sort of the continuity to it. So yeah.
Can I ask, because you mentioned you also do acting,
Yeah.
are you more of a stage actor, or are you hoping to get into some television, movies maybe, or?
Do you know, it's funny, when it comes to acting, I think I prefer, I've directed for stage. I'm probably more of a director when it comes to stage work. I'd like to do more TV. I find acting, I'm kind of more comfortable acting in front of a camera, because there's part of me, probably being a musician and being a performer, that there's part of me when I go on a stage and I'm playing a character, a big part of me just wants to turn and say hello, and you've got to obviously stop yourself, which is unusual, because a lot of actor friends of mine, they struggle with going on stage as themselves. It's not unusual for actors. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of 45-55%, if you like, towards being more music than anything else. But voice work actually is something that I'm sort of exploring a lot more of. I think because I've got the equipment here, because I've developed the studio for my music, it's easy enough for me to then sort of work on voice work, and I suppose being with my language background and playing with voices and accents and things is very much a kind of big part of what I like to do. So yeah, that's something I'd like to get into as well. So.
Okay. Have you done any voice acting or?
A little bit recently. I've been doing some work for a local historical company, and I think they were doing some sort of it's a sort of little film or something. It hasn't come out yet, so I haven't actually seen it yet. But it's for the Clan Hunter, so it's one of the clans in Scotland. It's a historical piece, and it was for one of the generals, I think, during the Second World War, who had sent a letter to his troops, or to his soldiers, kind of saying, well done, boys, on all your hard work, and but let's keep going with it, kind of thing. So they'd asked me to do a little voiceover for it. So I submitted a Scottish one. I submitted a very posh RP, yes, as well. So we'll see which one they go with. But yeah.
So how long have you been directing and acting?
Well, I finished my HND that's a higher national diploma. It's kind of just one step below a degree, by the way, since for American viewers. I finished that in 2004, and so I mean, obviously I had done lots of sort of unpaid or kind of amateur work before that, but and so since 2004 on and off, I have done sort of schools tours and TV appearances, little short films, a little bit of voice, pantomime. I have done the full dame, the full pantomime dame thing. If you imagine me with a blue afro this size and sort of 2-inch heels. Yes, there are photographs. Yeah. So yeah, that's fun. I there are a lot of sort of murder mystery and things like that around here. That's just your kind of fun events kind of stuff. But that's similar. There's a lot of kind of drag. I don't think probably drag's not really fair, because I think I've got a lot of respect for drag artists and what they do. I think what we do is more just blokes in a dress. It's not really anything anything kind of as polished as drag. But yeah, so yeah, I've done quite a lot of that, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
And that's the fun thing about acting, is that you can put on this whole new persona and personality and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. The lovely thing about doing it live, I mean, obviously in front of a camera, you can really explore situations, which is great, and that's really fun for kind of just getting lost in a part and the imagination and whatever it is you're doing. But also, in front of a live audience, especially things like panto and things like that, where you can just bounce off an audience. And I was lucky when I did panto. It was a small cast of 6 of us. It was Cinderella, and we all got on very, very well. We were it was a very strong ensemble feeling to what we were doing, and I've kept in touch with most of the guys as well. So we were so close and tight that, you know, when we came to, you know, when you're doing a run of, you know, sort of whatever it was, 8 shows a week or whatever it was, 8-9 shows a week for a month, you wander off at times, you know, but you can do that because you've got the audience, and if the audience are responding to, you can bounce off them and you can come back and go to the air and come back and go to, you know. But yeah, there were a few times when someone would say, meanwhile, back at the script. Yes. Yeah.
So tell me, because you're also a teacher, how long have you been teaching?
Well, I always say I try to avoid the family business, but I don't seem to be able to get away from it. I suppose teaching was just kind of inevitable for me because my parents teachers, my sister was a teacher. So, I mean, from as early as I could, I started teaching guitar privately. And then when I was at college, we did some community drama class. So then subsequent to that, in the sort of following years, kind of 10-15 years, I would work on a freelance basis now and again with the local council, with local youth theatres, sometimes music work, sometimes just drama, after school drama class. Other occasions we were working towards a production and actually, you know, stationed somewhere or posted in a school for a couple of weeks. So lots of bits and pieces over the years, and then of course China was probably the pinnacle of that so far. Yeah, but it's been, as I say, it's I guess sort of with my background, I probably was never going to get away from it. So I find myself kind of falling into that, but I probably fall into more being as a kind of director rather than purely as a teacher. So which is it's a slightly different headspace, but there's a lot of similarity, especially when you're working, especially if you're directing kids.
Yeah, I saw that you traveled to Africa, Malawi, with some other teachers.
Yeah, yeah,
What was that experience like?
that was amazing. Yeah, well, what it was is a theatre company based in here in Edinburgh called the Cutting Edge Theatre, and the woman that runs the company, it was a woman called Suzanne Loftus. So Suzanne had applied, she had come up with an idea for using sort of music and drama skills, music and drama sort of techniques to help with orphans and street kids around the world. I think she'd visited one of the orphanages in Romania or somewhere in Eastern Europe, and you know, she was seeing children whose basic material needs were met, but very little else. And you know, a lot of that was down to sort of having the tools or you know, and for the local kind of staff. So she came up with what was called COTS. It's a Children in Orphanages Theatre Scheme. So part of that was our trip to Blantyre in Malawi. So we traveled down to Malawi, and we were only there for a week. We were working Monday to Friday. It was just quite an intense kind of week. But what we did was we were working with youth leaders and teachers, and you know, people. One couple actually ran an orphanage themselves. So in the mornings we would teach the adults sort of music, drama. You know, we just kind of go through. It was always broken up into kind of 15-20 minute slots. So we were just there to teach them each kind of each technique or each game or whatever, and then you know, they'd kind of take note or they'd get a practice of it, and, you know, they'd take turns, whatever. And then after that, in the afternoons, we would then go and visit someone, whichever, you know, the center of somebody, of one of the folk that was in the group, and they would get a chance to sort of put some of these ideas into practice. And so yeah, it was incredibly humbling because we were doing things that we take so much for granted. We're just, to us as silly games. But yeah, you're finding yourself sort of teaching these sort of silly drama games, or music games, or little things. But the response we are getting from the teachers there and from the staff there was that, this is, you're helping us. This has given us so much. We can use that for this. We can use that for that. And, basically just because we take it so much for granted because it's part of our system, it's part of everything. One of the biggest ones for me actually was, I knew on the way over that we were going to take it in turns to sort of to take classes, or to lead a session. And so I was kind of racking my brains for days, weeks, running up to, what I could do that, and I'm bouncing around these different ideas. So on the plane over, I remember sort of consolidating and deciding, right, I've got this idea, I'll call it street percussion. And basically my idea was to say to everyone, right, take 5 minutes, go out around the courtyard to wherever you are, and just collect stuff that you can make noise with. Yeah, I know, it was great. I've done it with kids since then, actually, but which is great. But the guys were great. I mean, it was 2010, so it was the middle of the World Cup. Well, the World Cup was about to start in South Africa, about a month later, a few weeks later. And I don't know if you follow football, soccer, but the sound of that World Cup was very sort of known for the sound of the vuvuzela, which was the South African kind of horn trumpet thing. So I sent the guys out at one point for, during a break, so look, while you're on your break, see what you can find, something you can bash together or whatever. So some of the guys, they came back with stones and bricks and sticks or whatever, but some of them were getting really creative. Someone found a piece of copper piping, and a glass Coke bottle, and he jammed the pipe into the Coke bottle, and then he was blowing into it to try and make a sort of vuvuzela sound, and it more or less worked. It was quite impressive. Wow, the guys were so. And then all we did really was just, I would just sit there, sort of making a kind of solid kind of beat on my leg or whatever, and then the guys kind of join in. And then as people get more comfortable with that, then you start kind of adding this or adding that or adding offbeats or whatever. But it was a couple of days later, after we'd done that, we were in one of the orphanages, I think, and one of the youth leaders sort of tells the guys, go and get this, and I'm standing back and I watch him do exactly that with the kids. And a few of the teachers highlighted that at the end of the week. So we would never have thought that we could do that because we don't have instruments. With no way we can afford to have instruments, but you've shown us that we can actually do something with stuff lying around, and which was amazing. It was humbling. It was slightly embarrassing because I felt I'm teaching percussion in Africa, which feels very, very wrong. But yeah, it was quite the experience. It's quite the experience. I'm still in touch with some of the guys actually as well. So and they seem to be all kind of progressing and trying to improve with everything they're doing. So. But I'm lucky, over the years. A lot of things haven't worked for me, but there's a lot of things where I've had the opportunity to travel and work in different parts of the world and experience different cultures, and that has been amazing. There's no question.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot, especially with our schools and everything, because we teach music schools and we have the money to afford so much to give to the students and everything. And you look over there and hearing, we don't even have the money to afford this or that or the instruments. It kind of brings a new perspective to things about how lucky we are, and we don't look over there to see.
Yeah.
It really
Absolutely.
makes you think.
The thing as well that I didn't really understand before I went over there what a poor country was. I understood what poor people were. We've all been short. We have poverty in Scotland, across the UK, and we know what poverty looks like. But we're a rich country with poverty, with people experiencing poverty. But being in Malawi, I got to see what a poor country looks like, you know, where the country is short. Now, there were issues about that were going around at the same time about money that the president had spent on his daughter's birthday or whatever, and you know there are other issues and sort of, but you know that's a different debate. But one of the things that was clear was, you know, the country doesn't have the money to fund a lot of things, and one of the things that when it came to our work was that the individual projects could be well funded depending on who they received their funding from, but there was no funding from central government. There was no, the government didn't have, you know, the country had no money to sort of fund. But you know, we had one, like I said, we'd one couple, young couple, who were running an orphanage. It was basically just a large house where I think at one point there was 10 or 12 kids in one room, and they were just doing the very best that they could with very little, the very little that they had. But then in another teacher that another sort of site that we visited, it was a huge site, primary school with on-site accommodation for parents. You know, the school was better appointed than a lot of the schools in Scotland, and that was because it was funded by the Norwegian government. So that's you know, it's a matter of kind of luck, I guess, you know. So it's, in that sense, you know, what we could therefore do was, you know, what we were trying to do then was to try to kind of hand something over that they could use, but at the same time wasn't going to cost them anything, because then at least it's kind of across the board, it's flat, and obviously someone that's got access to, you know, a heavily well appointed primary school then can do more with it possibly, but trying to be as democratic as possible with everything that we're kind of handing over to them. But it's quite a lesson to kind of see that there actually isn't central money there, you know, which is, yeah, it's and I remember coming off the the bus as it happened, because we had a bit of a mess getting catching our flight from London, but getting off the bus in Glasgow after we'd come home, and it felt like I had just traveled in time. You know, because the idea that those two worlds could exist at the same time, it just, yeah, very, very difficult to compute.
Oh, wow. So tell me too, because you've done a lot, you know, to kind of help people and everything. Did you recently ran a race for Alzheimer's?
Well, that was a few years ago. Well, it
Oh.
wasn't a race. I used to run, again, it was, you know, sort of the kinds of community music work. So I ran a class called Singing for the Brain. It was a few years ago, and that was for Alzheimer's Scotland, and that was for about a year or so. And we just basically went into the room and sang songs with all the patients and their carers and family and things, and you know, that from my point of view, that was it, because you know, you're just seeing them every couple of weeks or so. But yeah, I did discover, you know, again, you know, the power of music can be quite something, because I remember having somebody saying to me that, you know, as they walk out, saying to me that, you know, her dad or whatever hadn't spoken for a week or 2 weeks, and he'd been sitting there singing along for the last hour. You know, wow, you know, just because music gets somewhere in all of us, you know, that it doesn't, you know, and with others that nothing else gets to. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was looking into a little bit of that when I was doing my master's, because I looked into sort of songwriting specifically, and then music in general for kind of mental health, and the benefits of it, and the benefits of sort of the songwriting classes and songwriting workshops are used in quite a few places across the world for, you know, sort of kind of health beneficial sort of reasons, rather than, you know, purely for artistic reasons. Yeah, one of the things that there was a project in San Francisco that used it quite a lot, and had also had quite marked responses and from just the way that, you know, people were able to connect with music that they were writing and working together, and, you know, that it was managing to connect with a sort of senior, I think it was a care home in San Francisco or something like that. Yeah, they also had, I don't know if it was San Francisco or New York. There was another one where, you know, again, you know, divisions and communities had been able to, you know, had, you know, they were still there, and they, no matter the age group, they were still kind of perpetuating, but as they kind of came together and used music to kind of write together, yeah, that very much kind of it started to build bridges. So yeah, I mean, fundamentally I'm a musician and a songwriter, and, you know, but part of that as being a professional is about looking into sort of, you know, the application of your music, and the application of what we do, as well as just me writing and going out and performing it.
Yeah, music can be very powerful, and I've known, unfortunately, some people that have suffered from dementia and Alzheimer's. And yeah, they do say that music is very helpful and very powerful.
It's, yeah, the music seems to connect with something, you know, that when you hear, I think, you know, tunes and smells, you know, it's when you smell something, or when you hear something that's familiar, it can take you right back to that moment, you know, reminding you of someone that you lost maybe, or a moment that you were together or whatever. But it can also connect someone with the person that they, I don't want to say used to be, because they're still that person, but it's somewhere maybe kind of further inside. And I know there's a lot of, I'm no psychologist, I'm no doctor when it comes to that. There's far more qualified people than me that are looking into that. But from my point of view as a musician, certainly, you know, there's music connects in a way that is, you know, it's involuntary. You know, I often say that when it comes to that, music and comedy are two of probably the only art forms I can think of where you will connect with it whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
You know, you can find yourself laughing at a joke and then think, oh, shouldn't laugh, you know, or you can find your foot tapping to a song and then think, and then look, oh, it's embarrassing, I don't like that song, you know. But it's, you can't help it, you know. It's maybe, I mean, you can say the same for, you know, sort of a good stage show or a film, or, you know, sort of just something engaging brings you in. But there is something about music and comedy that that goes that little step further. Yeah.
So what kind of music do you like? What are some of your inspirations that you kind of enjoy?
Growing up, growing up, my parents were, they listened to a lot of Americana, John Denver, Joan Baez, Tom Paxton, Bob Dylan. It was a lot of folk music basically growing up, and, you know, Irish folk, Scottish folk as well. So very much a melting pot of that. And then as I kind of discovered music more myself, bands like, you know, U2 and Simple Minds were kind of around. But more than anything, probably it's blues and soul music, is kind of soul more than anything. And recently I'm getting more and more kind of in touch with that. And funnily enough, as I did the masters, it kind of makes you go back and look at everything again, because having done the training year, I'm going back and watching things and listening to music that, you know, from 20-30 years ago, but with different ears, because I've been thinking about things differently. So yeah, I was kind of going kind of exploring all that. But I find myself certainly, you know, I mean, last night I was sitting listening to disco, and it's soul disco, but then with the electro, you know, Depeche Mode and Death Cab, Bright Eyes, you know, that's kind of where I feel there's a melting pot. Also, and one of my favorite styles of music is the Balearic sound, the Ibiza kind of dance sound. I don't know if you've ever sort of been in, you know, what your experiences of kind of holiday resorts or whatever, but having lived in Spain, you know, I mean, I'm sure you've got hot temperatures and we don't get hot temperatures that much, and not proper here. You'll have experienced it in the States. And when you're in a hot country, and there's that thing where the world sleeps during the day. So there's a place in Ibiza called Café del Mar, and there's Café del Mar and Café Mambo. I've never been, but I want to. But they have that style, which is there's this sleepy, really, really chilled out during the day when it's 40 degrees. And then you've got the kind of nighttime when the sun's gone down and everyone's gone out, and it's kind of more upbeat and kind of dance. And then there's that time in between where the world is just kind of opening up, which which I love. And that whole kind of Balearic sound is something. One of the songs, the song Into the Dream that's on my album is, I originally wrote that as to be remixed. So if anyone's watching that wants to remix it, then please feel free. So yeah, it's because it's written with a kind of one eye on that kind of Balearic dance kind of sound. I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to do it or not, but Stephen, my friend, he's had some work published in some of the dance sites and dance magazines and things. So no doubt we're exploring that, and we'll be exploring that a lot more in the coming kind of weeks and months.
Okay. Yeah, speaking of which, do you have any upcoming projects or anything you want people to know about?
Well, the more kind of long term is the album. Then my big goal for this year is to record an album with a lot more time and time and care to be able to make sure that it's, you know, sort of much more the sound that I want. That's the kind of big goal for this year. So, you know, I'm working on, there's about, I don't know, 7 or 8 kind of new songs at various levels of being written or not on the go at the moment, and some other ideas always. So that's the longer term one. I'm due to play my first live set in a while, in person, which will be fun. And it's a little place called Chaiovna, which is a Czech tea shop in the West End of Glasgow.
Okay.
It's kind of very bohemian place. It's very popular with a lot of the sort of musicians in the West End, musicians in Glasgow, Franz Ferdinand, Belle and Sebastian. It was actually under threat recently, and all these kind of big names came out and stood behind it. So yeah, we're going to be playing there on the 5th of April. So that'll be fun. My website is in the process of being rebuilt, so that will be done by the end of this week, I believe. So we're working on that because there's a lot of kind of change. That, you know, I've got new photos and things, we're working on the demos for the song for the album. So probably if people want to check in on my SoundCloud, that would be worth looking at, because there might be a few sneaky sort of tasters of some of the tracks going up there, because if they're just you know, they'll go up on my SoundCloud. Once they're ready and published, they'll go on Bandcamp. But yeah, my SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Kenny McColl. But if you just check in my website, which is just kennymccall.net, then, you know, you'll be kept up to date with everything. And I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, just Kenny McColl. Feel free, anyone, to get in touch. There's a new song. There is a new song there up on my Bandcamp, which is a free download, and it's called A Kind of Devil. It was done for a short film that I was involved with a couple of years ago. And because it's a little short film and it was about 7 minutes long, so I only needed maybe 40 seconds or a minute of music from me. So when, you know, that's all I had written originally, because that's what we needed. But once the film was finished, and, you know, people were seeing it, I got a really good response to the song. So I went back and then decided I think I'll finish. I need to rewrite it. So I went back and wrote it and finished the writing of it, and then recorded it and all that. So that finally went up live on Bandcamp just a few weeks ago. It's called A Kind of Devil. And it is the story of the film is kind of like a comedy musical, I think, because the story is, yeah, it was the story was the idea that I think there was about 4 or 5 people that they had received an email, and it was for a 48-hour film project. So what happens is you sort of get into teams, and then you get together on the Friday night, you receive your kind of your genres and what you're going to do, and you've then got 48 hours to produce a finished film, whichever way you want to do that. So yeah, the idea for this was that there was about 4 or 5 people who had received an email offering them a fantastic holiday away, and they all went, "Oh, that's amazing," and clicked yes without checking the terms and conditions. And they end up locked in this place, which is is it ever actually stated clearly? Yeah, which is locked in this kind of area where it turns out to be, I think, the daughter of the devil. It's not the devil, it's Satan's daughter. Is in there and kind of bumping people off one by one, depending on how they on these challenges that they go through. So the song is written from the point of view of Satan, which turns out I'm quite good at. Who knew? But there you go. You know.
So basically, kind of the moral of the story is to always make sure that you read the fine print.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I've often wondered, like, because whenever, you're downloading something or whenever it always has all this fine print and asks you if you agree, I wonder how many people actually read that.
Yeah. I think some of the systems now force you to sort of open it and at least scroll down. But let's be honest, we all skim it. So I don't know. Yeah.
I wonder how many people own our souls now.
Oh, I think mine is divided up across quite a few by now. It's yeah.
So last question. And if you feel comfortable, do you have any stories you'd like to share from like on the road or anything else from your acting days or anything?
China obviously comes to mind straight away. I mean, obviously the big one for me was the story of being in front of 120 Chinese children. But I think it's not so much a story, but yeah, I mean, maybe just sort of it's a humble brag, but I was just so proud of those kids because they went from, they were so quiet when we first met them. What, April? So we had to work with them to kind of bring out the volume. And then I had to kind of tune them. But yeah, fast forward to the November, and they're speaking English far better than my Mandarin, which was about 4 words. Yeah, I mean, it was the interesting thing when we did the summer camp. Everyone kind of went over to do the summer camp, and there was 4 different teams positioned in different schools. But then you had the kind of production team and the kind of more specialists coming over as well to teach. So then we broke off into our kind of dance and music and acting and whatever. But it became quite a bit of a standing joke that all the dance teachers, all the dance instructors could count 5, 6, 7, 8 in Chinese, and all the musicians could count 1, 2, 3, 4 because that's what we needed. So yeah. But yeah, the kids were amazing, and just to see the people were amazing. I mean, I understand that a lot of people have different experiences and different opinions about China as a country, but certainly the people that I met were fantastic, and the kids, the level of the difference, the change, the talent, in the short time that we were there was just stunning. Yeah. And yeah, I just look forward to getting back out and collecting some stories, really, because it's been a while. It's been a while since I was sort of on tour or playing or the last gig I played live was in person was in a place, a venue called Stereo in Glasgow in February of 2020. Yes. So just before the pandemic. So it just teased me and then closed it down. So yeah, I can't wait to get back out and get some stories.
So will you be doing any touring soon? Or you mentioned the gig that's coming up. Will there be any others?
Yeah, well, I'm working on that. I'm definitely working on that. So I'm sort of approaching different venues at the moment and seeing what we can bring together. So at the moment, there's that one, and that's Glasgow. That's in the centre of Glasgow. So, but you know, I've been approaching other venues outside of Glasgow and see what I can bring together. With the pandemic here, things are now starting to open up. But what's happening with a lot of the venues and a lot of the kind of live performances that places are starting to open up, but their initial kind of first few steps are with kind of artists and contracts and staff that were already there or that, you know, are in place or whatever. So they're kind of getting things going kind of first level before they start sort of adding new things to it. So yeah, I'm useless at promotion. I'm useless at management. So yeah. So if any potential managers out there want to come and help me, because I'm very good at writing and performing, but I'm terrible when it comes to my own self-promotion, but I'm getting better and I'm learning. So yeah, I'm trying to get there as much as I can.
Well, thank you so much, Kenny, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.